it's really important. It might sound a little silly, okay, responsive email, so it's just like making a responsive website. No, it's not. It's not at all. And the reason why, there's a big problem. We're going to talk a little more about it in depth. But I think this is 2015. I'm not sure how much of this has changed at this point. But what you have to be really careful of is email is way behind from web design. It's way behind, meaning even Google does not support media queries. And that becomes problematic when you're designing emails. I know with Spanx and with PetSmart, we had to leverage vendors, and all the emails they made just blew up. That was horrible. We'll never use them again. We would never use them again. They didn't even take the time to go out and see if our critical path devices were supported. And the problem with emails is, I believe in the reading, it calls out 50. I think the last thing I heard was 63. 63% of emails are open on a device, on a phone. So, yeah, right? So it's really important. And if you think that email marketing has lost it hasn't. It has not. And I don't mean the volume coming out. I mean the engagement that the user ends up participating in the email, right? So we're going to just talk today about a couple things, because I want them to be things that are on your mind. And the things I'm going to talk about, I'm going to steal right out of the article, and the article will be kind of broken up throughout the homework so that you can focus on understanding some of these things. But this is something I would bookmark if I were you. I would put my bookmarks somewhere, is as a tool, as a resource, knowing what's supported, what's not supported, email-wise. And then, of course, down here, I like this video. I think he does a good job. He mentioned some things in here as he's walking you through it that are really good to know about emails. Like, it's kind of funny. It's only been recent, really, that you even think about including linked style sheet or styles in your emails, because it's been when I started out, you had to base 64 all your images. So your image was just this huge block of letters and numbers, because it was just code represented to the image. It's only been lately that we've been able to start to include emails. But the problem with images. But the problem with including images is that dreaded white screen, right? We all see it, especially if you go into Outlook or into Gmail itself. Most of the time, your image doesn't make it through, right? And so, to some people, why is that a big deal? It's a really big deal if you're basing your entire campaign off of the image, or if it's about a product, or if it's about something that requires an image. Honestly, at the end of the day, in my opinion, the best rule of thumb is to not, if you don't have to include images in an email, don't. Because a lot of times, I don't know about you, but if I get that white screen, delete. I just get rid of it. And that's called bounce, right? And that bounce rate is really, really high. So we'll come out here. This is based on 2013, 2015. As I said, 50% of emails opened, in mobile. 67% in either a mobile or a tablet. I'm sure at this point these numbers are much higher, right? And it's only been 2-3 years, but I'm sure that they're much higher. Some important things, I'm just going to use this to touch on some points that I think are really important. Many of you heard me say, and I still think it's funny, I'm still entertained by it, which is, I can remember being at Bookmarks, and the big deal was like, we've hit 20% of the world using, opening stuff on mobile devices. And the funny thing is it's in my opinion, it's my professional opinion, it's completely flip-flop now. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 80-20 now instead of 20-80. And what's important to know about, getting your emails in is analytics. So we haven't really got into analytics, and some people are like, well, it's kind of cool to know who's coming to your site and things like that. For marketing, it's got some value, but for technology as a developer, analytics is everything. Because if 97% of your hits are coming from, which this is not possible, but right, if 97% of your hits were coming from iPhones, you would develop around iPhones, or maybe you wouldn't, because maybe you're Singular or your T-Mobile, and you want, and 97% of users are coming from iPhones. You also have that analytical data that says, and of those 97%, 90% of them are on AT&T. Well, you want to start hitting, right? And the whole reason of your marketing campaign is to hit those non-iPhone users and get them over to T-Mobile or something of that nature. And so you want to be really careful and pay attention to your analytics, and you want to pay attention to the marketing strategy, because that 97%, that email might not even be being sent to them. Like, exclude this 97%. Let's go after this 3% and see if we can, get some. And if you think there's not a lot of money in 3%, well, when you consider 3% might be a million some people at $120 a month, that's big. So you always want to pay attention. Windows, of course, as always, pain in the butt, right? And again, these kind of stop around 2016, these numbers. But you can definitely start to see, you can see trends. And the most important thing, although my data is not accurate, my data is not accurate. If I were being paid to go do this, I would go get the statistics of 2018, because there's a lot of times where these numbers just shift. They just completely shift. And a good example, unfortunately not pertaining to this, but a great example is last year, jQuery had its all-time low, by a huge, huge margin, And we're talking in 1 year, we saw dips like this one here, right? So you always want to do, when you're going to go do an email campaign, if you're going to do it for someone and they have analytics, you want to go pay attention to these different, right, just these little details, just these little fine details. As with any marketing campaign, the other thing, you want to make sure that which isn't up here, we'll talk about a marketing pixel. And I think we should do it in here, actually. I don't have it included. I'll try to rope it in so you can actually see what I'm talking about. When I say a marketing pixel, and just write a simple little line of PHP code and have it write to the database. And so a marketing pixel is exactly what it sounds like. It's an image with one dot. But what that image with one dot does is when they open it up in their browser, and this is how they can tell if you read it or not kind of thing, it calls that image. Well, when it calls the image, what you do is you put on the end of it a bunch of parameters that pull information and bring it back to your code. And it's not necessarily calling an image, it's calling the code, right? So, but it thinks it's opening an image, and it's just sending information back to the code, and it gets a negative return, and no big deal, and nothing happens. But we get the data. We get, whether or not somebody opened the email or not. That's how we can tell if somebody's opened the email. Absolutely.
It's pulling in information.
No, it's not pulling in information. It's sending out information.
Based on your behavior, right?
Yep. Yeah. And it's information that's already readily available. Do you know what I mean? A lot of cases, the best way to do it is the linking. So you put a link in your email. In that link, you actually have parameters. The marketing campaign ID, blah, 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 blah. They click on it, opens up a page, and now you've just gathered 10 times more information, right? But there's a bounce rate that you want to know. You want to know if you spent $50,000 on 5 million emails going out. You want to know how many of those emails made it there, were opened. You want to know how many were clicked on, right? You want that information. Giovanni's getting ready to go to, and so Giovanni could take that information, pull it up on a heat map, and his band will be like, I want to play for big crowd. Let's play here in Mexico. And Giovanni will be like, yeah, but look, we have opportunity. We're almost red here. Let's not play where we're red. Let's go play where we're yellow, because hopefully that'll turn red in, right?
Yeah, we know where to go.
Right. Exactly. You know where to put your money. And in some cases, the funny thing is those, you've had marketing at this point, I think, and you get it. So just to reiterate it, right? The majority of the time, the funny thing is, Godiva, for example, why dump money into a bright red dot when you have a yellow or orange dot that potentially could become bright red? You know? And that's smart marketing. But you don't ignore the red dot. You don't want that red dot to go away. So yes, you do got to feed the monkeys once in a while, right? But you don't want to put a ton of money into there. So in other words, the red dot, Giovanni might send out, hey, we're playing here, here, and here. The yellow dot, Giovanni might send out, hey, show this at the door and get 50% off ticket price or something like that, you know. So again, emails is about design, delivery, and analytics strategy. Because the only reason we're doing an email is for one of three reasons, right? It's either a newsletter, and what would a newsletter pertain to? What would that be for us as Giovanni? Why would he do a newsletter? I'm sorry I keep using you, but you're a good example. Why would Giovanni do a newsletter email? Fair enough, right? Keep the red dot red. Mailing list, right? So that's part of that whole thing there. So I want to make sure I'm staying on. I'm trying to keep it in order here. So you have your newsletter, you have your promotion, right? You know, where you're definitely trying to just promote a product or something like that, and then you have your new subscription, right, where you want people, you're trying to get new people. And so Giovanni might have 3 emails drawn up, and based on geographic location, one of those 3 will go out in that email campaign. Email campaigns are, you know, I hear people time and time again say, oh, emails time of the past, blah, blah, blah. I promise you this, on Thanksgiving Day, man, I watch servers light up because of emails. You know when that email went out, and you can tie it right to it. I don't care what you, Spanx, their servers used to come to a freaking grinding almost halt when she'd come in and have a hot hair up her butt in the morning, and by lunchtime, there was some kind of marketing email campaign with a code sent out, and they used to get mad at her because she wouldn't even tell us when it was. She was like, screw it. But that's how she became what she became. So opt-ins for emails, we're not going to get into marketing. I don't want to get into that. That's a different class. Responsive design email best practices. Super important, right? Design a single column so that it looks flawless even on clients like Gmail apps. Why? We don't have media queries. So if you can get things in a single column, you're much safer. And you always design mobile first for email. You always design mobile first for email. Why? Because when you crunch things together, it looks a lot worse than when you let things spread apart, or you just end up with a column on a page. Does that make sense? Right? Design with finger targets in mind. Keep the width a minimum of 320 to 550. Actually, really, we want to design to 480, so keep it 320 to 450. We really want to design to 480, in my opinion. Right? We all know there's nothing worse than a bunch of freaking touch points that are jammed all together, and you're driving and you're trying to, right? Call to actions, right? You'll see them referred to as CTA, kind of like what we're talking about. Call to actions, though, the big thing that you want, there's two big things that you want. First one, if you have some kind of code, if you're doing some kind of marketing campaign where they're going to have to bring a code over to your website, first of all, make that clickable, that automatically just brings the code over and brings them to the website and to the product, to whatever that is relative to, and have it automatically entered in for them and show them, right? The other thing is make sure that if you're not going to make it clickable, if you don't want to bring them over, make sure that you've used, and it is HTML5 semantic now. You can code it in where when they hold it down, it just copies the code, right? Like, so that they can copy that code when they go to the website, they can paste it in. Make sure your call to actions, in my opinion, if you have a call to action, if you want them to go somewhere, make sure it's a block element. It takes up every, right, so that it's right there in their face. Use white space wherever possible so that readers can skim through the content easily. Don't get creative with fonts on emails. Don't. Sans serif is safe. Don't go bolds. Don't go smaller than, I think it's 16. Yeah, bold on some devices will make it hard to read, right? So wherever you can, don't go bold. This says keep header clean and footer clean. Honestly, unless you have legal ramifications, try not to have a header and a footer. Try to have your content, try to keep it minimal, try to make your point, try to make it attractive to click, put links along the top if you need to, along the bottom if you need to. Obviously, keep what's really important in the top region of the page, because a lot of people aren't going to scroll down to read the email. What's that? Above the fold. Keep your pickup line where they can see it immediately, right? What's funny is, Retina devices, that kind of comes back to be careful with the font sizes and things like that, right? But what's really funny is, it's an opinion. I think Apple is losing market share. Don't crowd lines together, of course, right? So, and we can take care of that with padding, with text, right? Text padding, things like that. Make sure that that's taken care of. Tabbable call to actions, what we were talking about. And this is when you're working on your email, right? This is where that device, what's that? No, device, I can't think of the tool. In your web tools. Yeah, in your developer tools, but it's called device, and I don't know why I can't remember the name of it. Emulator, thank you. This is where device emulator really pays, because it gives you that touch testing. Do you know what I mean? Limit subject lines to 30 characters or less. Why would that be?
Because it's too long, it looks like spam.
Or a wrap, or things like that. Yes. You want it interviewable. You're right about spam, right? Be very. Email is one of those, man, where you really want to strategic thinking in your content that you're going to stick in there. Images, again, I say try to keep away from them. You want a minimum, right? You want the highest quality, but you want to be careful. Bandwidth isn't really so much an issue anymore, but you don't want a 1200 by 600 image coming up in a phone, but you also don't want a 20 by 30 when it's an image that should be 400. I always say keep inside 480, 430 is my number that I like. And the reason that I like 430 is for most, I don't know how many of you, but it pisses me off when there's stuff out along the edge and I kind of can get it, but I can't get it. So be careful of that. Restrict the height of your mobile emails. Sometimes you'll actually do call actions above the fold. Sometimes you'll do like we were talking about multiple emails where you'll target mobile and you'll target desktop. Test your responsive email design and make sure it is compatible across all major clients. There are all kinds of testing tools out there. We'll go ahead and we'll pull one up then and we'll take a look at that. All right. So one thing that you'll see inside of email that you don't see a lot of anymore is tables. And historically, the way, and you'll see inline styles, right? You'll see a lot of that because there are still people who don't trust embedded or linked or things like that, which is good. To be honest with you, most email, like if you create an email and you go out and use an email tool, it'll take your style CSS, your CSS, and it'll embed it into the code for you so that you can just, you want your email to go out in one file, in one stream. That's really what you want. But what's really funny is we still use a lot of tables in emails. Historically, emails were done with the idea of scalable. So emails were really probably the first attempt at responsive, because what we would do is say table 90%, center, and then inside it we would say, if we had 2 columns, we would say 50 and 50, so that it would shrink in, right? You know, now the best approach is flexible layout, fluid layout, flexible, but yet it still makes sense a lot of times to go ahead and do tables. Emails probably some of the biggest files that you'll make as far as code goes, because you're trying to pull it all in. What's important with it, well, let me do it. Boogers. Again, you want it to look nice on desktop, but I would even say that this one is not that great because of the fact that that's fine, but it'd be nice to just center that. Right. But here's the thing. This obviously was designed mobile first, right? This template. And when it opens up, the only thing we're really gaining is a little more width, a basic header, and a basic footer. And that's really what you want to stick with. And this is, as you know, it's a basic example. We can use things like hero example, right? But what you have to be careful of with the hero example is now you're calling in. How many of you know what the hero is? Who can tell me what the hero is? Sorry. It's a term frequently used in the industry. Your hero image is your big image in your page, right? You'll hear people call it a hero. That's our hero image right there. You know, nice narrow footer, header, sorry. Basically keeping things kind of simple. And again, when you're developing your email, honestly, that's what your preview window should look like when you're developing your window. You should close it down to device view and, you know, use it that way. Or better yet, when you're developing your email, go into your developer tools, take this over, turn on your device emulator, because then you can do the full touch, and do you know what I mean? So we have a newsletter. Basically, newsletter, you're going to have different topics in it, and your whole strategy behind your newsletter email is to get people to come out to your site, is to keep their interest in things, right? Keep them coming back. And so, honestly, at the end of the day, you're going to see that the majority of these all carry the same kind of. I personally do not agree or subscribe with the sidebar newsletter, because ultimately, to me, it's just a pain to navigate through. It's a pain to use. Same with your sidebar hero, right? I just don't like how you end up with things, and especially because a lot of times, if media queries don't work, you end up how you saw we had that right gap over there and things like that. What I would suggest, and I'll attach to homework, if you want to go the route of using a template, this one's a pretty decent template as far as not being too over convoluted. And I'll attach this one to the homework, and it will give you kind of a feel for different scenarios and how to handle different things. And what's cool is with this one, we'll also use some of those things that we learned about, like responsive images, things like that, and making our images work. Hang in there, Giovanni. We're almost good. So the article that you'll read, right, it's going to talk about mobile first. What is mobile first? Right? So what does that mean even more so? Right. Like, don't even worry about what the larger is going to look like. Worry about that after the fact, right? Simplify navigation. That's pretty obvious, right? Keep it down to where we want them to go. We don't, why put in 30 links that, right, or that have no relative meaning to our campaign or whatever it is that we're doing. Stacking. Honestly, I think whenever possible, you just stack. Don't even worry about doing columns. You can do columns, but you're better off stacking. You have greater success rates. Your numbers I've watched the numbers over years, and I can tell you this: the stacked with the call to action at the top with less information are the ones that bring in more people than anything else. What really brings in people is when they know that you do your emails where if you click on that code or you click on the call to action, it automatically enters the code into the website and gives you whatever it is that you're offering instead of making you work for it, right? And especially in mobile now. Do not do this.
It's gotta be old though. It's gotta be old.
Doesn't matter. There's people out there that do it.
There's still people that do that?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, you can't read that.
Do not do that. Right? Contrast is important, but there's a stepping point. Always make sure, right, in the top of our email. Well, now we're using Lore Ipsum. Always make sure that what's important, right, is up there. We already talked about that. We talked about hiding headers and footers. If they don't make sense, don't put them in. Navs, if they don't make sense, don't put them in. Big thing. One of the places where people make a lot of mistakes. More people, toys, Spanx, PetSmart. PetSmart's a good example. What was it called? Blue something. They would run a special on dog food. And instead of putting 15 different bags of dog foods out there, now, yes, they got a little kickback from Blue Diamond, whatever it was, right? But they would use that one product as the picture and take them to the dog food category page, right? But if they did that, as opposed to, even though someone might not use that dog food, if they put in 15 different ones, they actually had a substantially lower. It was really interesting. And since then, I think they've gotten really smart with it, which what they've done is they've taken a picture and broke it up into quarters. And so like the top of it is Blue Diamond, in the middle, this one is that, this one is that, and this one is that, and it makes a complete bag. And they're basically saying we have multiple brands on sale, right? Up here, like here, introduction header, this is where you want 20% off of Blue Diamond dog food. Look, this is what we were talking about, and Gmail still does it to us, right? Gmail still does it to us. Why? Why is it done like that? Why does Gmail refuse to give in? Why does Outlook refuse to give in? Does anybody know?
Because they think they rule.
Huh?
Because they think they rule that everyone should follow them, at least with Gmail.
No. No. Security. So partly your point was, what's going on with that? Well, one of the biggest things, you want to get your email kicked into spam or not even make it through, put GIFs in your email. Why GIFs? They're executable. They have executable code inside of them, right? It's not really executable, but they have processed code block in them that there was a time where that's one of the ways that people would penetrate your back door. When you're putting images in, like down here, for example, right? Take the time, use the knowledge that you've learned about responsive imaging and using different image sets and things like that, right? Notice, right? Make sure that the image, because people are looking at it on a smaller device, make sure that you've cropped don't put it that monitor is that big. It makes no sense. Just get rid of the image then.
But we're saying that media queries don't work in Gmail. So how do we get column drop and all that other fun stuff?
That's just it. That's why, in a lot of cases, it's just better to go single column, and let your image basically take a percentage, which is totally against what we want to do. But right, you have to weigh all those things in. You have to weigh them all in. Replace, yeah. Large targets, we talked about that. Embrace negative space. We've talked about that, right? Always embrace negative space. Bigger is better with the buttons, Amy, never mind, Valerie. You don't want to be here. These people are corrupt without your guidance. Link to mobile-friendly landing pages. That's a big one, right? Make sure, Toys R Us was horrible for that. They would take you right to this page that would, yeah, it was just nuts. And then, of course, one of the biggest things that people miss in an email, especially if you're brick and mortar or you, right, is somewhere in your email, and depending what kind of business you're doing, I would put it right up here. Click to call us and make sure that, right? And what's the other one that I would add there? If you're brick and mortar, right? Get directions in Google Map. And do that link correctly so that it opens Google Map with the destination and is asking you, do you want to get there from this current location? That's pretty much the high level, right, of responsive email.